When you hold the magic sword, what do you say?
Order of Grayskull.
Go on.
It seems the prodigal prince has returned. I am a devil, but I mean to be a god. The deal.
You are he who will restore peace to Eternia.
Skeletor took my family, and he destroyed our world.
I'm gonna fight for it.
Hell yeah!
And you, Fisto!
Mr. Allen!
It's Adam, dude.
Hey, put your neck away. Let me show you what real power looks like.
Our time for talk is over.
What if I told you that one of the most iconic fantasy heroes of all time is finally returning to the big screen in a way we've never seen before? After decades of failed attempts, cancelled projects, changing studios, and years of waiting, Masters of the Universe is finally coming back. This isn't just another remake, it's a chance to introduce He-Man and the world of Eternia to a whole new generation while giving longtime fans the epic adventure they've dreamed about for years. But can this film succeed where so many previous versions failed? In today's video, we're diving deep into everything about Masters of the Universe 2026. Its incredible journey to the screen, the talented cast, behind the scenes secrets, production challenges, hidden details, fascinating facts, and why this movie could become one of the biggest fantasy films of the decade. Stay with me until the end because some of the most surprising facts about this movie might completely change the way you see He-Man forever. Long before superhero movies dominated theaters around the world, there was another hero who inspired millions of children. He-Man was more than just a muscular warrior carrying a magical sword. He represented courage, hope, friendship, and the idea that ordinary people could become extraordinary when they believed in themselves. The original Masters of the Universe franchise became a worldwide phenomenon during the 1980s through action figures, animated television shows, comic books, and countless pieces of merchandise. For many fans, He-Man became one of the defining heroes of childhood. The story takes place on the magical planet of Eternia, a world filled with ancient castles, powerful magic, strange creatures, futuristic technology, and unforgettable villains. At the center of this universe stands Prince Adam, who appears to be a normal young royal, but hidden within him is an incredible secret. By raising the legendary Sword of Power and declaring the famous words, "By the power of Grayskull, he transforms into He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe." His greatest enemy is Skeletor, a ruthless sorcerer obsessed with conquering Eternia and stealing the limitless power hidden inside Castle Grayskull. Their rivalry has become one of the most famous battles in fantasy history, standing alongside many legendary hero versus villain conflicts that audiences have loved for generations. For decades, Hollywood wanted to bring this world back to life. The challenge was never finding fans. Millions of people already loved He-Man. The real problem was figuring out how to create a version that could satisfy longtime fans while also attracting audiences who had never watched the original cartoons. That challenge proved much harder than anyone expected. Many people don't realize just how long the journey toward the 2026 film actually was. Over nearly 20 years, several studios announced new versions of Masters of the Universe. Different directors joined the project. Screenwriters wrote multiple drafts. Some versions leaned heavily into science fiction while others focused more on fantasy. Each new creative team had a different vision of what He-Man should become. Every few years, Exciting announcements would appear online only for the project to disappear once again. Some versions never moved beyond early script development. Others came close to entering production before studio plans changed. Fans experienced years of excitement followed by disappointment. It almost became a running joke across the internet whenever another announcement appeared about a new Masters of the Universe movie. People would celebrate only to wonder if it would actually happen this time. One interesting fact is that dozens of different ideas were reportedly considered throughout these years. Some stories explored Prince Adam's early life in much greater detail. Others wanted to modernize the entire mythology for today's audiences. There were discussions about making the film darker, while other concepts embraced the colorful adventure and optimism that made the original series so beloved. Finding the right balance between nostalgia and fresh storytelling became one of the biggest creative challenges. Hollywood itself changed dramatically during this long development period. Superhero movies transformed into billion-dollar franchises. Fantasy worlds like magical kingdoms, ancient prophecies, and mythical heroes became popular again. Advances in computer generated imagery also made it possible to create worlds that once seemed impossible to show convincingly on screen. Technology finally reached a point where Eternia could be realized with the scale and beauty fans had imagined for decades. The return of fantasy storytelling in modern cinema also played an important role. Audiences showed they were eager for large scale adventures set in imaginative worlds. Instead of relying solely on realism, viewers embraced stories filled with magic, monsters, ancient civilizations, and legendary weapons. This growing appreciation for fantasy created the perfect opportunity for Masters of the Universe to return. Another fascinating aspect is how important the franchise remains even after so many years. While younger audiences may know He Man from newer animated series, older fans remember rushing home after school to watch the original adventures. Entire generations grew up collecting action figures and imagining battles between He Man and Skeletor. This emotional connection gave the filmmakers an incredible responsibility. They weren't simply making another blockbuster, they were revisiting an important part of many people's childhood memories. The creative teams understood that nostalgia alone would not guarantee success. Modern audiences expect emotional storytelling, believable characters, spectacular action, and meaningful relationships. A successful adaptation would need to give Prince Adam genuine personal struggles instead of relying only on muscles and magical powers. Viewers want heroes who grow, learn, fail, and eventually overcome impossible challenges. This is one reason why many fans became excited once serious development finally began moving forward. Instead of rushing production, the filmmakers appeared determined to build a strong foundation. Creating an entirely new cinematic version of Eternia required careful planning. Every kingdom, creature, weapon, and costume had to feel both familiar and fresh. The world itself plays an important role in making Masters of the Universe unique. Eternia isn't simply another fantasy kingdom filled with castles and dragons. It combines advanced technology with ancient magic in ways rarely seen in other stories. One moment characters may battle with magical swords, while the next they encounter futuristic machines, robotic warriors, or advanced weapons. This unusual blend gives the franchise its own identity and separates it from many traditional fantasy adventures. Designing this world for modern cinema presented countless creative opportunities. Artists could reimagine famous locations while preserving their recognizable features. Castle Grayskull, perhaps the most iconic location in the franchise, needed to feel mysterious, ancient, and unbelievably powerful. Fans have waited years to see this legendary fortress fully realized with today's filmmaking technology. Interesting fact. The famous phrase, "by the power of Grayskull," has become one of the most recognizable transformation lines in pop culture. Even many people who never watched the original cartoon can recognize those legendary words. Another fascinating detail involves the Sword of Power itself. The sword isn't simply a weapon, it symbolizes responsibility, courage, and the willingness to protect others. Prince Adam doesn't become a hero because he is physically strong. He becomes worthy because he chooses to defend innocent people despite overwhelming danger. That message has remained timeless for generations. One reason He Man continues to resonate with audiences is because his transformation represents something universal. Everyone faces moments where they must find courage hidden inside themselves. Prince Adam's journey reminds viewers that true strength comes from character, not appearance. The filmmakers also recognize that Skeletor deserves to be far more than a simple villain. Great fantasy stories often feature unforgettable antagonists whose ambitions feel genuinely dangerous. Skeletor isn't motivated only by destruction. His endless pursuit of absolute power creates fascinating conflicts that challenge every hero around him. A compelling version of Skeletor could become one of the most memorable movie villains in recent years if portrayed with enough depth and intelligence. Throughout development, countless artists, designers, writers, and producers work together to imagine what modern audiences expect from an epic fantasy adventure. They studied decades of franchise history while considering how today's viewers experience blockbuster films. Their goal wasn't simply to recreate old episodes. They wanted to build a living, breathing world capable of supporting future stories. Interesting fact, the Masters of the Universe franchise has inspired toys, comics, animated series, video games, novels, and collectibles for more than 4 decades, making it one of the longest lasting fantasy brands in entertainment history. As excitement surrounding the 2026 film continued to grow, conversation spread across social media. Fans debated costumes, character designs, story possibilities, and potential surprises. Every casting announcement generated thousands of discussions. Some hoped the movie would remain faithful to the original mythology, while others welcomed bold new ideas that could introduce Eternia to an entirely new audience. One of the greatest strengths of the franchise has always been its colorful collection of heroes and villains. Beyond He-Man and Skeletor lies an enormous cast of memorable characters, each bringing unique personalities and abilities to the adventure. Their relationships help transform Eternia into a world that feels alive rather than simply serving as the backdrop for action scenes. The filmmakers knew audiences today expect emotional investment alongside spectacular visuals. Beautiful landscapes and massive battles can impress viewers, but memorable characters keep them engaged from beginning to end. If audiences truly care about Prince Adam, his friends, and the people of Eternia, every victory and every loss becomes much more meaningful. Another interesting fact is that fantasy filmmaking has become one of Hollywood's most technically demanding genres. Every creature, magical effect, ancient city, costume, and battle sequence requires thousands of creative decisions before cameras even begin filming. Months, sometimes years, of concept art, digital planning, and visual development are necessary before production can truly begin. For Masters of the Universe, that preparation became especially important because many fans already had strong mental images of Eternia from decades of animation and artwork. Meeting those expectations while creating something cinematic required extraordinary attention to detail. As anticipation continued building, one question remained above all others: who would be chosen to bring these legendary characters to life? Finding the perfect actor for He-Man wasn't simply about physical appearance. The role demanded someone capable of portraying both the humble Prince Adam and the fearless warrior He-Man with equal conviction. The casting process would become one of the most closely watched aspects of the entire production. And when the casting announcements finally arrived, fans across the world realized that this long awaited journey was becoming real at last. For years, fans wondered who could possibly step into one of the most physically demanding and recognizable roles in fantasy history. Playing He-Man was never going to be as simple as putting on armor and holding the sword of power. The actor would need to represent two completely different personalities. On one side is Prince Adam, a young royal who often hides his true abilities behind a relaxed and sometimes playful personality. On the other side is He-Man, a fearless warrior whose confidence inspires everyone around him. Convincingly portraying both versions of the same character requires far more than an impressive physique. It demands emotional range, charisma, and the ability to make audiences believe that the transformation is not only physical but also deeply personal. When Nicholas Galitzine was announced as the new He-Man, the news immediately became one of the biggest entertainment stories online. Many people already knew him from romantic dramas and coming-of-age films, while others were surprised that an actor best known for emotional performances had been chosen to play one of the strongest heroes ever created. As expected, social media exploded with opinions. Some longtime fans questioned the decision, believing the role should go to someone already famous for action movies. Others argued that acting ability mattered more than previous experience with blockbuster films. The discussion quickly became one of the hottest topics among movie fans. Instead of focusing only on appearance, many people began looking back at Nicholas Galitzine's previous performances. They noticed his ability to portray determination, vulnerability, confidence, and emotional growth. Those qualities are essential for Prince Adam because his journey has always been about more than physical strength. A hero becomes memorable because audiences understand the person behind the legendary armor. Preparing for the role reportedly required months of intense dedication. Transforming into He-Man meant building significant muscle, increasing physical endurance, learning combat choreography, and adapting to the demanding schedule of a major fantasy production. Modern action movies require actors to perform complex sequences involving swords, running, climbing, and extended fight scenes. Even with stunter performers assisting during dangerous moments, the lead actor still needs to maintain believable movement throughout the film. Interesting fact: many actors in modern fantasy films spend 6 months or more preparing physically before filming even begins. Their training often includes weightlifting, martial arts, sword fighting, flexibility exercises, endurance workouts, and strict nutrition programs. Fans closely followed every update related to Galetzin's transformation. Whenever new photographs appeared showing his progress, conversations immediately spread across social media platforms. Some praised the impressive physical changes, while others continued debating whether he could truly capture the spirit of He-Man. This kind of discussion is common whenever beloved characters receive new live action adaptations. Expectations are incredibly high because millions of people already have their own version of the hero in mind. The responsibility placed upon Nicholas Galitzine became enormous. He wasn't simply starring in another action film. He was carrying the hopes of an entire franchise that had waited decades for another chance on the big screen. That pressure would challenge even experienced blockbuster actors. Of course, every great hero needs an unforgettable enemy. Few villains are as instantly recognizable as Skeletor. His skull-like face, dark armor, magical abilities, and endless hunger for power have made him one of the most iconic antagonists in fantasy history. Unlike many villains who simply want wealth or revenge, Skeletor seeks complete domination over Eternia and the limitless secrets hidden within Castle Grayskull. His obsession drives nearly every major conflict in the franchise. Creating a live action Skeletor presents one of the biggest artistic challenges in the entire production. The character must look intimidating without appearing unrealistic. Modern makeup techniques, prosthetics, visual effects, and costume design all need to work together to create a villain that feels alive rather than artificial. Fans expect Skeletor to retain his classic appearance while also looking believable in a realistic cinematic world. Many movie lovers believe that fantasy films succeed or fail based on the quality of their villains. A powerful hero shines brightest when facing an equally powerful opponent. If Skeletor feels intelligent, ruthless, and genuinely dangerous, every battle becomes more exciting because audiences understand exactly what is at stake. Interesting fact: Skeletor consistently ranks among the greatest animated villains ever created, remaining popular for more than 40 years through cartoons, comics, toys, and video games. Beyond the central rivalry, Masters of the Universe introduces an entire world filled with memorable supporting characters. Tila has always stood out as one of Eternia's bravest warriors. She is loyal, highly skilled in combat, and often serves as one of Prince Adam's closest allies. Her courage makes her far more than a supporting character. She frequently becomes one of the emotional anchors of the story, balancing action with genuine friendship and leadership. Then there is Man at Arms, one of the wisest figures in Eternia. As a master inventor, strategist, and warrior, he plays an essential role in defending the kingdom. His experience often guides the younger heroes during moments of uncertainty. Many fans consider him the heart of Eternia's defense because he combines intelligence with unwavering loyalty. The mystical sorceress represents another fascinating character. She protects Castle Grayskull and safeguards its ancient secrets. Her connection to the castle adds mystery to the story, reminding audiences that the greatest power in Eternia cannot simply be claimed through force. Wisdom, sacrifice, and responsibility remain equally important. King Randor and Queen Marlena also contribute to Prince Adam's personal journey. Rather than existing only as royal figures, they represent family, duty, and the responsibilities of leadership. Their presence reminds viewers that becoming a hero often means balancing personal desires with obligations to others. The villains surrounding Skeletor add another layer of excitement. Evil Lyn brings intelligence and magical power. Beastman relies on brute strength and his ability to command dangerous creatures. Trapjaw combines terrifying weaponry with mechanical enhancements. Triclops uses advanced technology alongside deadly combat skills. Together, they create an intimidating force capable of threatening all of Eternia. One of the franchise's greatest strengths has always been its incredibly imaginative character designs. Unlike many fantasy stories where soldiers wear similar armor, nearly every character in Masters of the Universe possesses a unique visual identity. Their appearances immediately communicate their personalities, abilities, and roles within the world. Adapting these designs for live action required careful consideration. Costumes needed to remain recognizable while functioning realistically during demanding action scenes. Armor had to allow actors to move naturally. Weapons needed to look ancient yet practical. Every design decision balanced nostalgia with realism. Interesting fact: costume designers on fantasy productions often create multiple versions of each outfit. Some are designed specifically for dialogue scenes, others for combat, and lighter versions are made for demanding stunt sequences. Chemistry between actors became another important focus during production. Large fantasy adventures rely heavily on believable friendships. If audiences truly believe these characters trust one another, every emotional moment becomes more powerful. The relationships between Prince Adam, Tila, Man at Arms, and the sorceress help transform the story from a simple battle between good and evil into a tale about loyalty, teamwork, and sacrifice. At the same time, the interactions among Skeletor and his followers reveal another side of the conflict. Villains rarely succeed through fear alone. Their internal rivalries, ambitions, and shifting loyalties often create unexpected complications. These dynamics add depth to the story and prevent the antagonists from becoming one dimensional. One fascinating aspect of modern fantasy filmmaking is how much preparation occurs before cameras begin rolling. Actors frequently attend rehearsal sessions together for weeks. They practice combat choreography repeatedly until movements become natural. Directors use these rehearsals not only to perfect action but also to strengthen emotional relationships among the cast. Sword fighting, in particular, demands extraordinary precision. Every strike, block, and movement must appear dangerous while remaining completely safe. Choreographers design each battle almost like a carefully planned dance. Actors memorize hundreds of individual movements before filming begins. Interesting fact: a single major sword fight in a fantasy blockbuster can require several weeks of rehearsal before the first scene is ever filmed. The emotional side of Prince Adam's transformation also became an important topic among fans. Many hoped the film would explore his inner conflict more deeply than previous versions. Carrying the responsibility of protecting an entire world is not an easy burden. Every transformation into He-Man represents another moment where Adam places the safety of others before his own comfort. This emotional weight gives the character far greater depth than simply being an unbeatable warrior. Likewise, audiences hoped Skeletor would receive meaningful development beyond his desire for conquest. Understanding a villain's motivations often makes them even more compelling. A complex antagonist creates stronger emotional stakes because viewers recognize that the conflict extends beyond simple good versus evil storytelling. The excitement surrounding the cast continued growing as production moved closer. Every announcement fueled new theories. Fans analyzed interviews, studied promotional images, and debated how faithfully the movie would adapt famous storylines. Some believed the film might combine elements from different animated series, while others expected an entirely original adventure inspired by decades of franchise history. Regardless of which direction the story ultimately takes, one thing became increasingly clear: the filmmakers were treating Masters of the Universe as more than a nostalgic remake. They were building the foundation for a modern fantasy epic capable of introducing Eternia to millions of new viewers while honoring the legacy that longtime fans have treasured for generations. As cameras finally prepared to roll, years of planning were about to become reality. Massive sets were under construction, elaborate costumes were ready, visual effects teams had begun designing magical worlds, and the cast had completed months of preparation. After decades of waiting, Masters of the Universe was finally entering the most important stage of its journey. The production itself, once filming wrapped, many people assumed the hardest part of making Masters of the Universe was over. In reality, another massive phase of the journey was only beginning. Post production is where thousands of separate pieces slowly come together to create one complete movie. Editors begin assembling scenes, visual effects artists spend months building magical worlds, composers write emotional music, sound designers create every sword clash and magical explosion, and color specialists shape the final visual style. For a fantasy film of this scale, post production can sometimes take nearly as long as filming itself. The first people to begin shaping the movie were the editors. During production, directors often shoot multiple versions of the same scene from different camera angles. Some emotional conversations may be filmed 10 or 15 times with small changes in performance. Action scenes generate even more footage because every movement needs to be captured from several perspectives. By the end of production, hundreds of hours of material may exist, even though the finished movie lasts only around 2 hours. Editors have one of the most important jobs because they decide how the audience experiences the story. A single cut made 1 second earlier or 1 second later can completely change the emotion of a scene. Fast editing creates excitement and urgency during battles, while slower pacing allows emotional moments to breathe. Every transition, every close up, and every wide shot influences how viewers connect with the characters. For Masters of the Universe, the editors had an especially difficult challenge. The film combines fantasy, adventure, action, emotion, humor, and mystery. Each of those elements needs its own rhythm. Battle scenes should feel intense without becoming confusing. Emotional conversations should feel meaningful without slowing the adventure too much. Finding that balance is one of the hidden arts of filmmaking. Interesting fact: editors often create several different versions of the same movie before deciding which one works best. Entire scenes can be shortened, rearranged, or even removed if they interrupt the pacing. While the editing team worked on the structure of the film, visual effects artists began one of the biggest workloads in the production. Fantasy movies depend heavily on digital artistry because many locations and creatures simply cannot exist in the real world. Every magical spell, distant castle, mythical creature, glowing crystal, and enormous battlefield requires careful digital craftsmanship. Unlike older fantasy films that relied mostly on practical effects, today's technology allows artists to create breathtaking environments that feel almost real. However, the best visual effects are often the ones audiences never notice. Instead of drawing attention to themselves, they blend naturally into the world, making impossible things feel believable. Creating Eternia required extraordinary imagination. Mountains, forests, ancient temples, hidden ruins, royal cities, and mysterious landscapes all had to share the same visual identity. Each location needed its own atmosphere while still feeling like part of one connected planet. Castle Grayskull became one of the largest visual effects projects in the movie. Beyond its massive exterior, the castle's interior contains chambers filled with ancient magic, forgotten knowledge, and incredible power. Every room had to communicate mystery and history. Even small details like glowing symbols on walls or floating magical energy help audiences believe that this place has existed for thousands of years. Interesting fact: large fantasy productions sometimes employ hundreds of visual effects artists working across multiple countries at the same time. One of the most anticipated moments in the film is naturally Prince Adam's transformation into He-Man. This iconic sequence has become legendary over the decades, and modern audiences expect something visually unforgettable. The transformation is not simply about changing clothes or increasing muscle. It represents courage, destiny, and accepting enormous responsibility. Visual effects artists worked closely with the director to ensure that the transformation feels emotional rather than just spectacular. Light, energy, sound, camera movement, music, and acting all combined during this scene. If done successfully, it could become one of the defining moments of the entire movie. Equally important are Skeletor's magical abilities. Unlike He-Man, whose strength often feels noble and protective, Skeletor's powers represent corruption, destruction, and ambition. The filmmakers wanted audiences to recognize this difference immediately through visual language. His magic needed its own unique appearance, helping distinguish it from the heroic energy associated with Castle Grayskull. Color also became an important storytelling tool. Warm golden tones frequently symbolize hope, bravery, and heroism, while colder or darker colors emphasize danger, fear, and evil. Without saying a single word, the color palette quietly guides the audience's emotions throughout the film. Another major component of post production is sound design. Most viewers never realize how many sounds are created after filming ends. During production, microphones mainly capture dialogue. Almost everything else is either cleaned up or recreated later inside professional recording studios. Sword impacts, footsteps across stone floors, armor moving during combat, magical explosions, roaring creatures, castle doors opening, wind blowing through ancient ruins, and countless other sounds are carefully designed one by one. These details make the fantasy world feel alive. Interesting fact: sound artists often use surprising objects to create movie effects. Breaking vegetables, dragging metal across concrete, shaking chains, or even recording animal noises can all become part of a fantasy soundtrack. Music is another element that shapes how audience experience the adventure. A memorable fantasy score does much more than provide background sound. It gives emotional identity to heroes, villains, friendships, victories, and sacrifices. Great movie music allows audiences to recognize characters before they even appear on screen. For Masters of the Universe, the composer faced an exciting challenge. The music needed to honor the adventurous spirit of the original franchise while feeling cinematic enough for modern audiences. Large orchestras, powerful brass instruments, dramatic percussion, emotional strings, and majestic choirs are all common ingredients in fantasy soundtracks because they create a sense of wonder and scale. He-Man's musical theme is particularly important. Every great hero benefits from a memorable melody that audiences associate with courage and hope. Whenever Prince Adam embraces his destiny, the music should make viewers feel inspired alongside him. Skeletor also deserves a musical identity. Rather than simply sounding loud or frightening, his theme can communicate intelligence, ambition, and relentless determination. Strong musical themes often become just as memorable as the characters themselves. Interesting fact: some famous movie themes were written before filming was even completed, allowing directors to edit scenes around the music instead of the other way around. The cinematography also plays a huge role in how the story feels. Camera placement influences every emotional moment. Wide shots reveal the breathtaking scale of Eternia, while close ups allow audiences to connect with characters during personal conversations. Moving cameras create energy during battles, while still shots often emphasize quiet emotional scenes. Fantasy movies frequently combine practical photography with digital extensions. Actors may perform on real castle walls, while visual effects later expand those structures into enormous fortresses stretching across the horizon. This technique helps maintain realism without limiting imagination. Lighting contributes just as much to storytelling. The filmmakers likely use bright natural light during scenes representing hope and unity, while darker environments enhance moments of danger and uncertainty. Castle Grayskull itself may shift visually depending on the emotional state of the story, appearing welcoming during moments of triumph and mysterious during times of crisis. As post production continued, the marketing campaign slowly began taking shape. Creating excitement for a major fantasy blockbuster requires months of planning. The first promotional image often becomes a major event because fans analyze every visible detail. A glimpse of the Sword of Power, a partial view of Castle Grayskull, or a silhouette of He-Man can generate thousands of online discussions within hours. Teaser trailers usually focus on atmosphere rather than revealing the entire story. They remind audiences why they loved the franchise while introducing new viewers to its world. A well made teaser asks questions instead of answering them. It creates curiosity, excitement, and anticipation. Interesting fact: studios often release teaser trailers many months before the film because the goal is to start conversations rather than explain the complete plot. Every trailer frame receives extraordinary attention from fans. Viewers pause videos, zoom into backgrounds, compare costumes with classic designs, and search for hidden Easter eggs. Sometimes a 2-minute trailer generates weeks of online discussion because passionate fans enjoy discovering small references that casual audiences might miss. One aspect many people looked forward to was hearing the famous phrase, by the power of Grayskull, in a modern cinematic setting. That single line has become deeply connected to the identity of He Man. Delivering it at the right moment could become one of the most unforgettable scenes in the entire film. The promotional posters also carry significant importance. A successful poster communicates the tone of the movie instantly. The Sword of Power, Castle Grayskull, He-Man standing against overwhelming darkness, or Skeletor preparing for battle are all powerful images capable of attracting both nostalgic fans and newcomers. Social media naturally became a major part of the marketing campaign. Every new announcement, behind the scenes photograph, interview, or promotional video encouraged fresh conversations. Fans created theories about hidden storylines, predicted surprise appearances, debated character designs, and imagined how the movie might connect with future adventures. Interestingly, modern audiences often participate in marketing themselves. Fan art, reaction videos, podcasts, discussion forums, and social media posts help keep excitement alive between official announcements. In many ways, the community becomes part of the promotional campaign as the release date moved closer, anticipation continued growing. After decades of cancelled projects and endless speculation, audiences finally stood on the edge of returning to Eternia. Expectations remained incredibly high, but so did curiosity. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Would Masters of the Universe 2026 become the fantasy epic fans had waited decades to experience, or would it face the same challenges that had prevented previous attempts from reaching the big screen? The answer would soon belong not only to critics but to millions of moviegoers around the world who had waited years to witness the legendary battle between He-Man and Skeletor unfold on the biggest screen possible. At its heart, Masters of the Universe has never been just a story about a man with incredible strength fighting an evil sorcerer. Beneath the spectacular battles, magical weapons, and unforgettable creatures lies a much deeper story about responsibility, identity, courage, and sacrifice. These timeless themes are one of the biggest reasons why the franchise has remained popular for more than 40 years. While younger audiences may be attracted by the action, longtime fans understand that the emotional journey of Prince Adam is what truly gives the story its lasting power. One of the strongest themes is the idea that real strength comes from character rather than physical power. Before becoming He Man, Prince Adam is often underestimated. Many people see him as relaxed, carefree, or even irresponsible. They do not realize that he carries one of the greatest secrets in the universe. Every time danger appears, Adam must make a difficult choice. He cannot simply live an ordinary life because the safety of Eternia depends on him. This hidden burden makes him a very different type of hero compared to many modern action characters. He does not seek fame or recognition. In fact, much of his greatest work happens without anyone knowing the truth. He protects his kingdom while keeping his identity hidden from many of the people closest to him. That creates emotional conflicts that audiences can easily understand. Many viewers can relate to the feeling of carrying responsibilities that others do not fully see. Whether it is supporting a family, working hard toward a dream, or overcoming personal struggles, everyone faces moments where they must stay strong even when nobody recognizes their efforts. Prince Adam's journey reflects that universal experience. Interesting fact. One reason He-Man became such an iconic hero is that his transformation symbolizes finding the strength already hidden inside yourself rather than becoming someone completely different. Another major theme throughout the story is destiny. From the moment Prince Adam receives the Sword of Power, his life changes forever. Destiny, however, is never portrayed as something easy. It comes with sacrifice. Adam loses the freedom to think only about himself because every decision now affects the future of Eternia. The filmmakers reportedly wanted this emotional responsibility to feel more realistic than ever before. Instead of showing an invincible hero who never struggles, they aim to explore the emotional cost of leadership. Even the strongest warrior can experience doubt. The difference between an ordinary person and a true hero is the willingness to keep moving forward despite those doubts. This emotional depth could become one of the movie's greatest strengths. Modern audiences often connect more strongly with characters who feel human. Physical strength alone rarely creates memorable heroes. Vulnerability, compassion, and determination leave a much deeper impression. On the opposite side of the story stands Skeletor. While He-Man represents responsibility, Skeletor represents the dangerous pursuit of unlimited power. His obsession with controlling Castle Grayskull demonstrates what happens when ambition becomes more important than morality. Interestingly, Skeletor is not simply interested in ruling a kingdom. He wants complete control over the greatest source of power in existence. That desire reflects one of humanity's oldest themes. Throughout history, countless stories have warned about the consequences of seeking absolute power without wisdom. This conflict between responsibility and ambition gives the story much greater emotional weight. The battle is not only physical, it is also philosophical. One character believes power exists to protect others, while the other believes power exists to dominate them. Interesting fact. Many of the greatest fantasy stories explore the same central question: what kind of person deserves great power? Masters of the Universe places that question at the center of its mythology. Friendship also plays a major role. Prince Adam does not protect Eternia alone. Tila, Man at Arms, the Sorceress, and many other allies stand beside him during moments of danger. Their loyalty reminds audiences that even the strongest hero needs trusted friends. These relationships prevent the story from becoming a simple battle between two powerful individuals. Instead, it becomes a story about teamwork, trust, and shared sacrifice. Every character contributes something unique to the fight against evil. The bond between Prince Adam and Tila has always fascinated fans. Their relationship contains mutual respect, friendship, and emotional complexity. Depending on the direction taken by the filmmakers, this relationship may become one of the emotional foundations of the movie. Family is another important theme. King Randor and Queen Marlena represent more than royal authority. They remind audiences that leadership begins at home. Prince Adam's responsibilities as a son eventually prepare him for his responsibilities as a protector of Eternia. One interesting aspect of the franchise is how it combines fantasy with science fiction. Unlike traditional medieval fantasy worlds, Eternia includes advanced technology alongside ancient magic. Characters wield swords while futuristic vehicles travel across incredible landscapes. Robots exist alongside mystical creatures. This unusual combination gives Masters of the Universe a unique identity that separates it from many other fantasy franchises. This blend of genres allows the filmmakers tremendous creative freedom. Battles may include magical energy one moment and advanced technology the next. Ancient prophecies can exist alongside futuristic inventions without feeling out of place because that combination has always been part of Eternia's identity. Interesting fact: one of the reasons the original toy line became so popular was its unique mix of fantasy heroes, monsters, robots, magic, and science fiction technology. As excitement surrounding the film continued growing, social media became filled with theories. Fans examined every trailer frame searching for clues about hidden storylines. Some believed famous supporting characters might appear unexpectedly. Others wondered whether the movie would plant seeds for future adventures. Speculation became part of the entertainment itself. Every promotional image sparked new discussions. A mysterious symbol in the background, a redesigned costume, or even the position of the Sword of Power in a poster could generate thousands of comments. Many longtime fans also searched for Easter eggs connected to the original animated series. Modern adaptations often include small references designed specifically for dedicated supporters. These hidden details may appear as familiar phrases, recognizable objects, background characters, classic locations, or subtle visual nods to older stories. Finding these Easter eggs has become one of the most enjoyable parts of watching major franchise films. Some references are immediately obvious, while others remain hidden until fans discover them weeks later. Interesting fact: some fantasy movies intentionally hide dozens of small references that even attentive audiences may not notice during their first viewing. The internet also did what it always does with major releases: it created memes. Even before the movie reached theaters, fans began sharing humorous images based on promotional photos, trailers, and casting announcements. Memes have become a normal part of modern movie culture. They allow audiences to celebrate their excitement while keeping conversations alive between official marketing campaigns. He-Man himself has inspired countless internet jokes over the years. His incredible strength, iconic transformation, unforgettable catchphrase, and distinctive appearance have all become part of online culture. Rather than hurting the franchise, many of these memes actually introduce younger audiences to characters they might never have encountered otherwise. Skeletor has enjoyed a similar popularity online. His dramatic personality makes him perfect material for humorous internet posts. Fans frequently turn his exaggerated expressions and memorable dialogue into jokes that spread across social media. Even people unfamiliar with the original series often recognize Skeletor through memes. This unexpected internet popularity demonstrates how deeply these characters have entered popular culture. They continue finding new audiences in ways that never existed during the 1980s. Another fascinating aspect is how different generations approach the movie. Older fans often compare every detail with childhood memories, while younger viewers experience Eternia with fresh eyes. The filmmakers therefore face the difficult challenge of satisfying both groups simultaneously. If successful, the movie could unite multiple generations around one shared adventure. Parents who once watched the original cartoon might now introduce He Man to their children through this new cinematic version. That kind of cross generational appeal has helped many successful franchises remain relevant for decades. The film also arrives during a period when fantasy storytelling is once again attracting global audiences. People continue seeking stories that transport them into imaginative worlds filled with heroes, villains, ancient legends, and impossible adventures. In many ways, Masters of the Universe feels perfectly positioned to benefit from this renewed appreciation for epic fantasy. As release day approached, discussions shifted toward expectations. Some believed the movie could become the beginning of an entirely new cinematic universe. Others preferred a self contained adventure that focused on telling one great story before expanding further. Regardless of future plans, one thing remained clear: the success of this would depend on much more than nostalgia. Audiences today expect meaningful storytelling, memorable characters, breathtaking visuals, emotional depth, and thrilling action. If Masters of the Universe delivers those qualities while respecting the legacy of the original franchise, it has the potential to become one of the defining fantasy films of its generation. After decades of waiting, countless cancelled projects, changing studios, rewritten scripts, and endless speculation, the Sword of Power was finally ready to return to the big screen. Whether viewers grew up with the original cartoon or were discovering Eternia for the first time, they were about to witness a new chapter in one of fantasy's most enduring legends. The final judgment, however, would belong to audiences around the world. Only after the lights dimmed in theaters and the adventure began would everyone discover whether He Man's long awaited return truly lived up to one of the greatest comeback stories in modern fantasy cinema. As the release date drew closer, excitement surrounding Masters of the Universe 2026 reached a level that the franchise had not experienced in decades. For longtime fans, this was more than just another blockbuster arriving in theaters. It was the return of a childhood legend. Many people had waited years, some even decades, to finally see He Man and the world of Eternia brought back to the big screen with modern filmmaking technology. The journey had been filled with cancelled projects, rewritten scripts, changing studios, and endless rumors. Now, after all those years, audiences were finally counting down the days. The marketing campaign played a huge role in building that anticipation. Instead of revealing everything at once, the studio carefully introduced the movie piece by piece. The first promotional images focused on atmosphere rather than story. Fans caught their first glimpse of the Sword of Power, hints of Castle Grayskull, and dramatic looks at the main characters. These images quickly spread across social media where every tiny detail was examined. Some fans compared costumes with the original cartoon, while others looked for hidden clues about the story. The teaser trailer became one of the biggest moments in the campaign. Rather than showing every major battle, it focused on mystery and emotion. Sweeping shots of Eternia, flashes of magical energy, quick glimpses of heroic battles, and a dramatic look at He-Man holding the Sword of Power immediately captured attention. One of the most anticipated moments came when audiences finally heard the legendary phrase, "By the power of Grayskull," in a modern live-action setting. For many fans, hearing those words again created an emotional connection that brought back memories of the original franchise. Interesting fact: Movie studios often spend months editing a 2-minute trailer because it becomes the first impression millions of people have of the film. Every trailer release created new discussions online. Fans pause scenes frame by frame, searching for hidden Easter eggs. Some believe they had discovered references to classic episodes of the animated series. Others created theories about surprise characters or future sequels. This type of fan engagement is one of the strongest signs that a franchise still has a passionate audience. The cast also became an important part of the marketing campaign. Interviews, magazine features, convention appearances, and behind the scenes videos allowed audiences to see the dedication that went into making the film. Nicholas Galitzine spoke about the intense physical training required to become He-Man and the responsibility of playing such an iconic character. Other cast members discussed their excitement about introducing the world of Eternia to a new generation. One of the most effective parts of the campaign was its balance between nostalgia and fresh storytelling. Longtime fans recognized familiar symbols, while younger audiences saw an exciting fantasy adventure that did not require knowledge of the original series. That balance helped the movie appeal to a much wider audience than simply those who grew up in the 1980s. As premiere events began around the world, excitement reached another level. Red carpet appearances, early screenings, and fan events created an atmosphere of celebration. Cosplayers dressed as He-Man, Skeletor, Teela, Evelyn, and many other beloved characters. For many fans, these premieres felt like a reunion with characters they had loved since childhood. Interesting fact, major fantasy premieres often feature life-size props, replica weapons, costumes, and theme displays that allow fans to step into the movie's world before even watching it. When critics finally watched the film, the first reviews naturally focused on several important questions. Did the movie respect the original franchise? Did Nicholas Galitzine successfully become He-Man? Was Skeletor a memorable villain? Did the world of Eternia feel believable? And perhaps the biggest question of all, was the long wait worth it? Like many major franchise films, reactions varied. Some reviewers praised the ambitious world building, impressive visual effects, emotional performances, and spectacular action sequences. Others focused on pacing, storytelling choices, or comparisons with previous versions of the franchise. This mixture of opinions is common for films based on beloved properties because every fan enters the theater with different expectations. Audience reactions, however, often tell a different story from critics. Fans who have followed Masters of the Universe for decades approached the movie with emotional investment. Many celebrated seeing Castle Grayskull, the Sword of Power, and Eternia realized on such a large scale. Younger viewers enjoyed discovering a fantasy world filled with unique heroes, memorable villains, and exciting action. One fascinating aspect of modern movie culture is how quickly audience reactions spread across the internet. Within hours of the first screenings, social media fills with spoiler free impressions, favorite moments, emotional reactions, and recommendations. Positive word of mouth can significantly influence a movie's success during its opening weeks. The box office became another major talking point. Fantasy blockbusters require enormous budgets because of their extensive visual effects, elaborate costumes, large casts, and complex production design. As a result, financial success becomes especially important. Strong opening weekends often demonstrate the power of fan enthusiasm, while steady attendance in later weeks usually reflects positive audience satisfaction. Interesting fact, a fantasy movie's long term success often depends more on repeat viewings and positive recommendations than on its opening weekend alone. Merchandise also returned to the spotlight. Action figures, clothing, replica swords, posters, books, collectibles, and limited edition items once again became popular among both collectors and new fans. The Masters of the Universe franchise has always enjoyed a close relationship with merchandise, dating back to its original toy line that introduced millions of children to He-Man's adventures. Seculographers were especially excited about high-quality replicas of the Sword of Power and detailed figures based on the film's updated character designs. For longtime fans, owning these collectibles represented another way to celebrate the return of one of their favorite franchises. The movie also sparked renewed interest in the older animated series. Many younger viewers who enjoyed the film decided to explore the original cartoons, while longtime fans revisited classic episodes with a fresh appreciation. This renewed attention demonstrated how a successful adaptation can introduce classic stories to entirely new audiences. Another interesting effect of the film's release was the revival of discussions about fantasy storytelling in general. Many viewers appreciated that Masters of the Universe embraced colorful imagination rather than relying solely on realism. Its combination of magic, science fiction, heroic adventure, and larger than life characters reminded audiences why fantasy continues to hold such a special place in popular culture. The success of the film naturally led to conversations about the future of the franchise. Fans began speculating about possible sequels, spin offs, streaming series, and additional stories set within Eternia. The universe contains dozens of heroes, villains, kingdoms, creatures, and untold adventures that could support many future projects if audiences continue embracing the franchise. Interesting fact: one of the biggest strengths of Masters of the Universe is the size of its mythology. Decades of comics, cartoons, toys, and novels provide countless story possibilities for future adaptations. Looking back at the entire journey, one fact becomes impossible to ignore. Very few movies experience such a long and difficult road to production. Many projects disappear forever after spending years in development. Masters of the Universe survived changing studios, creative differences, rewritten scripts, and shifting trends within Hollywood. The fact that it finally reached theaters is a remarkable achievement in itself. The film also serves as a reminder that some stories never truly disappear. Generations change, technology evolves, and audiences grow older, but timeless heroes continue finding new ways to inspire people. Prince Adam's journey from an ordinary young prince to the protector of Eternia still carries the same message it did decades ago. True strength comes from courage, responsibility, and the willingness to stand up for others. Perhaps that is why He-Man has remained relevant for so long. His greatest power has never been his muscles or magical sword. His greatest power is the hope he represents. He reminds audiences that anyone can become stronger by choosing kindness over fear, responsibility over selfishness, and courage over surrender. Whether viewers entered the theater as lifelong fans or complete newcomers, Masters of the Universe 2026 offered something increasingly rare in modern cinema: a classic heroic adventure filled with imagination, memorable characters, spectacular action, and timeless themes. As the credits rolled, many audience members left the theater with the same feeling that children experienced decades earlier while watching the original adventures. They had just spent 2 hours in a world where heroes still inspire hope, villains challenge courage, and ordinary people can become extraordinary simply by choosing to do what is right. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of Masters of the Universe. No matter how many years pass, no matter how technology changes, the message remains exactly the same. Sometimes the greatest power in the universe is not found inside a magical castle or an enchanted sword. It is found inside the person brave enough to lift that sword and fight for everyone else. One of the biggest reasons Masters of the Universe has survived for more than 4 decades is that it offers much more than exciting action scenes. Behind every sword fight, magical battle, and dramatic confrontation lies a collection of characters who each represent different ideas about courage, leadership, loyalty, fear, and ambition. Understanding these characters makes the story much richer because every decision they make reflects something larger than the immediate conflict. Instead of simply asking who will win the next battle, the audience begins asking what kind of person deserves to shape the future of Eternia. Prince Adam remains the emotional center of the entire franchise. On the surface, he appears to be an ordinary prince living inside the royal palace. Many people underestimate him because he often presents himself as relaxed and easygoing. However, beneath that calm personality is someone carrying one of the greatest responsibilities imaginable. He knows that whenever danger threatens Eternia, he alone possesses the ability to transform into He-Man. That secret creates a fascinating emotional conflict. He cannot reveal the truth to everyone around him, yet he must constantly risk his life to protect them. This hidden identity makes Prince Adam surprisingly relatable. Most people have experienced moments where they felt misunderstood or underestimated. They know what it feels like to carry responsibilities that others cannot see. Adam's greatest challenge is not becoming physically stronger. It is learning to accept that leadership often requires sacrifice. Every transformation into He-Man reminds him that his own comfort must come second to the safety of countless others. Interesting fact, unlike many superheroes who gain powers through accidents or scientific experiments, Prince Adam willingly accepts the burden of protecting Eternia every time he raises the Sword of Power. He-Man himself represents something slightly different. While Prince Adam embodies uncertainty and personal growth, He-Man symbolizes confidence, courage, and hope. The transformation is not simply physical. It reflects Adam embracing the very best version of himself. In many ways, He-Man is the visible expression of the courage that already exists inside Prince Adam. This idea has inspired fans for generations because it suggests that greatness already exists within ordinary people. The magical transformation becomes a symbol rather than just a visual spectacle. It reminds viewers that everyone possesses hidden strength waiting to emerge during life's most difficult moments. Skeletor stands as the complete opposite of He-Man. While He-Man uses power to defend others, Skeletor seeks power for himself. This difference defines their entire relationship. Skeletor believes strength should create domination. He-Man believes strength creates responsibility. That philosophical conflict makes their rivalry timeless because similar struggles appear throughout history in countless different forms. One of Skeletor's most fascinating qualities is his intelligence. He is far more than a villain who relies on brute force. He constantly develops new plans, searches for ancient knowledge, and manipulates others to achieve his goals. His patience often makes him even more dangerous than his magical abilities. He understands that controlling people can sometimes be more effective than defeating them directly. At the same time, his greatest weakness is his obsession. His endless pursuit of absolute power frequently blinds him to other possibilities. He becomes so focused on conquering Castle Grayskull that he overlooks the value of loyalty, friendship, and trust. This flaw gives the story emotional depth because audiences recognize that even the most powerful villain can be defeated by the consequences of his own choices. Interesting fact, many classic fantasy villains lose not because they lack strength, but because their desire for unlimited power eventually becomes their greatest weakness. Teela remains one of the franchise's strongest characters. Unlike many supporting heroes who simply follow the main protagonist, Teela possesses her own leadership qualities. She is brave, disciplined, highly skilled in combat, and fiercely loyal to the people she protects. Her determination often balances Prince Adam's more relaxed personality, creating a partnership built on mutual respect. Modern audiences increasingly appreciate strong female characters who contribute meaningfully to the story rather than existing only to support the main hero. Teela has always represented independence and courage, making her one of the franchise's most respected characters. Man at Arms offers another type of heroism. His greatest strength is wisdom. While younger warriors often rush toward danger, he approaches problems with experience and careful planning. His inventions, military knowledge, and leadership make him one of Eternia's greatest defenders. More importantly, he acts as a mentor, reminding younger heroes that courage should always be guided by intelligence. Mentor characters play an important role in fantasy stories because they represent accumulated knowledge passed from one generation to another. They prepare heroes not only to fight enemies but also to become responsible leaders themselves. The sorceress introduces another fascinating dimension to the story. Her connection to Castle Grayskull places her between the ordinary world and the mysterious forces shaping Eternia's future. She represents wisdom, balance, and the protection of ancient knowledge. Unlike warriors who rely on physical strength, the sorceress demonstrates that wisdom can be equally powerful. Her presence also reminds audiences that some forms of power require restraint. She protects incredible magical secrets not because she wishes to control others, but because she understands the consequences of those secrets falling into the wrong hands. Interesting fact. Castle Grayskull is often viewed not simply as a fortress, but as a symbol of knowledge, responsibility, and balance between good and evil. The villains surrounding Skeletor deserve attention as well. Characters such as Evilene, Beastman, Trapjaw, and Triclops each bring unique personalities and abilities to the conflict. Rather than functioning as identical followers, they contribute different strengths that make Skeletor's forces feel more believable. Evelyn, in particular, has always stood out because of her intelligence and magical talent. She frequently appears capable of pursuing her own ambitions rather than simply obeying orders. This complexity creates interesting possibilities whenever alliances begin shifting. Beastman represents raw physical aggression and his connection to dangerous creatures. Trapjaw combines mechanical enhancements with relentless determination. Triclops introduces advanced technology and strategic thinking. Together, they demonstrate that evil can take many different forms. One reason fans continue discussing these characters decades after their creation is the incredible imagination behind their designs. Each possesses a distinctive appearance that immediately communicates personality. Their costumes, weapons, abilities, and even names contribute to the colorful identity of Eternia. Fantasy storytelling often succeeds when audiences can instantly recognize every major character. Masters of the Universe excels in this area because nearly everyone possesses a memorable silhouette and visual identity. Interesting fact. Many of the franchise's characters originally became famous through action figures before appearing in animated adventures, helping build one of the most successful toy lines of the 1980s. The relationships among these characters create much of the emotional power within the story. Prince Adam depends on trusted friends who believe in him. Skeletor constantly struggles to maintain control over ambitious followers. Families experience pride, disappointment, hope, and sacrifice. These emotional connections ensure that battles always carry meaningful consequences. Without strong relationships, fantasy adventures risk becoming empty spectacles filled only with visual effects. Masters of the Universe avoids this problem by grounding its magical world in recognizable human emotions. Loyalty, fear, love, ambition, regret, and hope remain understandable regardless of how extraordinary the setting becomes. Another reason the franchise has remained popular is its optimistic tone. Many modern fantasy stories focus heavily on darkness, tragedy, and moral uncertainty. Masters of the Universe, however, continues celebrating classic heroism. It suggests that courage, kindness, and integrity still matter. Heroes are expected to inspire others rather than simply survive. That optimistic message has become increasingly valuable. Audiences often enjoy stories reminding them that good people can overcome overwhelming challenges through determination and teamwork. He Man's adventures never promise that victory will come easily. Instead, they emphasize that perseverance eventually triumphs over fear. This message helps explain why new generations continue discovering the franchise. Although technology changes and filmmaking evolves, the emotional core remains timeless. Every generation understands the importance of standing up for what is right, protecting loved ones, and refusing to surrender when facing impossible odds. Perhaps that is the greatest achievement of Masters of the Universe. Beneath its magical castles, legendary swords, futuristic machines, and unforgettable villains lies a simple truth that never grows old. True heroes are not defined by extraordinary powers, they are defined by the choices they make when others need them most. Masters of the Universe is a big fantasy adventure movie that came out in 2026. It's based on the toy line and cartoon that Mattel created many years ago, the one built around the muscular hero He-Man. This new film is only the second time the story has been made into a live action movie, the first one having come out all the way back in 1987. In some countries, the movie is called He Man and the Masters of the Universe instead, but it's the same film either way. The movie was directed by Travis Knight, a filmmaker known for blending big spectacle with a personal touch. The screenplay went through many hands over the years, and by the time the film was finished, the writing credit belonged to Chris Butler along with the directing duo Aaron and Adam Nee and David Callahan. Because the project had been in development for so long, dozens of other writers had contributed ideas, drafts, or ended up with smaller credits along the way. The cast is full of recognizable faces. Nicholas Galitzine plays Prince Adam, the young man who becomes He-Man. Camila Mendes plays Tila, his close friend and eventual love interest, who also happens to be the daughter of Duncan, the character better known to fans as Man-at-Arms. Idris Elba takes on that role of Duncan. Jared Leto plays the villain Skeletor, a bony, skull-faced sorcerer who wants to rule the planet Eternia. Alison Brie plays Evelyn, a sorceress who works alongside Skeletor. Other big names in the cast include James Purefoy and Charlotte Riley as He-Man's parents, King Randor and Queen Marlena, Morena Baccarin as the mystical sorceress who guards Castle Grayskull, and Kristen Wiig, who voices a robot character named Roboto. Dolph Lundgren, who actually played He-Man in the original 1987 film, makes a fun cameo appearance in the new movie as a gym goer nicknamed Macho Man. The story itself begins in Eternos, the main city on the planet Eternia. A young Prince Adam and his friend Tila are being trained to fight by Duncan, who serves King Randor as his top general and happens to be Tila's father. Trouble arrives when the villain Skeletor attacks the city with his forces, capturing Adam's parents and badly wounding Duncan. To keep Adam safe, a magical guardian known as the Sorceress sends him through a portal to planet Earth, which happens to be the home planet of his mother, Queen Marlena. Before he goes, she gives him a powerful weapon called the Sword of Power, but during the escape, Adam ends up losing the sword. 15 years pass. Adam has grown up on Earth, living an ordinary and slightly boring life working in human resources and sharing an apartment with his friend Hussein in Oklahoma City. He's never stopped thinking about the sword he lost as a kid, and after getting a mysterious tip, he finally tracks it down at a comic book store. That discovery quickly turns his life upside down. He gets arrested for supposedly stealing the sword, and while being taken away, he's suddenly attacked by one of Skeletor's henchmen, a brutish creature called Beastman. Tila, who sensed that Adam had touched the sword, swoops in to rescue him, and the two escape together back to the ruins of Eternos, where the last free warriors of Eternia have been hiding out ever since Skeletor took over. At first, the surviving warriors don't take Adam seriously, partly because he used to give them embarrassing nicknames as a kid. He and Tila end up locked up alongside Duncan, who has become a bitter drinker since his injury, and a combat robot named Roboto, who has been reduced to doing chores. The four of them break out together, and slowly Adam wins over the other warriors, a colorful group that includes Fisto, Ramman, a fighter named Dian, Mossman, and Mechanic. When Skeletor's forces catch up to them, Adam finally uses the sword to transform into a powerful warrior for the first time and defeats one of Skeletor's most dangerous fighters, a cyborg named Trapjaw. Things get darker after that. Skeletor manages to capture most of the group, including killing Mossman and forcing another character to reveal that Adam is the one holding the sword. Skeletor then reveals something shocking. Adam's parents are actually still alive, being held prisoner, and he's willing to trade them for the sword. Adam, Tila, and Duncan head into Skeletor's stronghold to try to save them. Adam manages to fight off Skeletor's personal guards on his own, but during the final confrontation, King Randor is badly hurt in a cave collapse, and Adam is knocked out and loses his powers. He and the others end up imprisoned together with his mother, and it's here that Adam reunites with his childhood tiger companion Cringer. Meanwhile, Skeletor discovers he can't actually use the sword's magic himself. His advisor Evil Lyn suggests performing a ritual at Castle Grayskull to unlock its power. This sets up the movie's big final battle. Adam and his friends escape and rally the remaining warriors for one last stand against Skeletor's army. Duncan gets his revenge by defeating Trapjaw, though the group loses Roboto in the fighting. Riding on Cringer, Adam and Tila storm into Castle Grayskull itself, where several fights break out at once. Adam faces Skeletor directly, Tila takes on Evil Lyn, and Cringer squares off against Beastman. During the fight, Skeletor actually manages to break the Sword of Power and stabs Adam, then uses magic to trap him in painful memories of his old life on Earth. At his lowest point, the sorceress appears to Adam and tells him something important. The real power was never in the sword itself, it was inside him all along. With that realization, Adam is able to pull himself together, reassemble the sword, and transform once more. He even tries to talk Skeletor into giving up the fight peacefully, but Skeletor refuses, saying he genuinely enjoys being the villain. Their final battle ends with Adam turning Skeletor's own weapon against him, destroying it and causing Skeletor's body to disintegrate. In the chaos, Evil Lyn quietly slips away rather than going down with him. The movie wraps up about 6 months later. Queen Marlena has taken back her rightful place ruling Eternos, Roboto has been rebuilt, and Adam's old roommate Hussein has come to Eternia and finally seen for himself that everything Adam once told him was true. When Tila asks if Adam has picked a hero name for himself, he shyly says he'll go by He-Man. Right on cue, the two of them jump into action again, with Cringer now transformed into his armored form Battle Cat to answer a new threat. There are also a few extra scenes after the credits, a trend common in a lot of big modern movies. A magical character named Orko shows up to deliver a light-hearted closing message. There's also a quieter, more emotional moment where Queen Malina admits to Duncan that she's given up hope of ever finding both of her children again, while Duncan stays a bit more hopeful about their missing daughter. That daughter turns out to be Adam's long-lost twin sister, Princess Adora, who is shown leading a battle of her own on a different planet, a clear nod to the classic character She-Ra, who fans of the franchise will instantly recognize. In one final scene, Evelyn returns to the ruins of Castle Grayskull to recover Skeletor's skull, and as she leaves, his eerie laughter can still be heard, hinting that he might not be completely gone. Getting this movie made turned out to be an incredibly long and complicated journey, one of the most famously delayed projects in Hollywood. The idea of a new He-Man movie was first floated all the way back in the mid 2000s, with directors like John Woo reportedly attached at various early points, though nothing ever got off the ground. Warner Brothers was involved for a while before Sony Pictures took over the rights around 2009, partnering with producers from Escape Artists to start fresh. Through the 2010s, an almost dizzying number of directors were attached at different points, including names like John M. Chu, and later a shortlist that included well-known filmmakers like Rian Johnson and Andres Muschietti, though none of them ended up actually making the film. Directors Jeff Wadlow and later Mackie were both attached for stretches, with various screenwriters brought in to keep rewriting the script along the way. At one point, actor Kellan Lutz was even in talks to play He-Man himself. Around 2017, filmmaker David S. Goyer was attached to both write and direct, and he reportedly wanted to make something as sweeping and epic as the Lord of the Rings movies. However, the studio ultimately felt that vision would be too expensive, so his take on the film was shelved, even though he stayed on in a smaller writing role. In 2018, the directing job finally went to Aaron and Adam Nee, the sibling filmmaking duo, and for a while it looked like the movie might finally happen. Actor Noah Centineo was cast as He-Man in 2019 and he spent months training for the physical role, but he ended up leaving the project in 2021 as the film continued to stall. In 2022, the rights moved over to Netflix, which had already had success producing animated He-Man shows. Actor Kyle Allen was cast in the lead role at that point, and the Nee brothers, working with writer David Callahan, put together yet another new script. But just a year later, in 2023, Netflix pulled the plug on the project entirely after having already spent around $30 million developing it, leaving Mattel to look for a new home for the film once again. That new home turned out to be Amazon MGM Studios, which picked up the rights in late 2023 and officially confirmed the deal in 2024. This time, director Travis Knight came on board along with writer Chris Butler, who worked with Knight before. Nicholas Galitzine was cast as the new He-Man not long after, kicking off a wave of casting announcements over the following months that eventually filled out the rest of the movie's large ensemble. Filming finally began in January 2025, taking place mainly in London at Sky Studios Elstree, with additional filming at Bray Film Studios. Several UK locations were used to bring Eternia to life, including areas around Canary Wharf, the historic Wells Cathedral, and cave systems like Wookiee Hole Caves. Some scenes were also shot in Iceland. Production wrapped in June 2025, something Galitzine later described as one of the most meaningful roles he'd ever taken on. Behind the scenes, the movie's visual effects were split between several major studios, including Industrial Light and Magic, Dean Edgy, and a handful of others, which is fairly typical for a large-scale fantasy film with this many creatures, transformations, and magical effects. The score was composed by Daniel Pemberton, and interestingly, Queen's guitarist Brian May contributed to the soundtrack as well, tying the film back to the classic rock-influenced feel of the original 1980s franchise. A British rock band called The Darkness even recorded an original theme song for the movie. Beyond the score, the film also uses several existing songs from artists like The Cure and Queen to help set its tone and nostalgic mood. Masters of the Universe had its official premiere at the TCL Chinese Theatre in Los Angeles on May 18, 2026 and opened widely in the United States on June 5, 2026 with international release handled separately by Sony. As part of the promotion, Amazon put on a massive drone light show over Los Angeles that ended up setting a new Guinness World Record for the largest drone display ever created. generating a lot of buzz right before release. Despite that flashy build-up, the movie's box office performance ended up being disappointing. It opened at around $29 million dollars in North America, landing in second place behind another new release that same weekend, and then dropped sharply in its second week, falling more than 70%. Industry commentators at outlets like Variety and their app noted that the film seemed to struggle to draw in a wide audience beyond older fans who grew up with the original 1980s cartoon and toys, which made it harder to justify its reportedly large production budget. As of late June 2026, the film had earned about $109 million dollars combined worldwide, a number generally considered underwhelming for a movie of this size and scope. Despite the soft box office numbers, a studio executive at Amazon MGM publicly framed the opening in a positive light, pointing to strong reviews and suggesting the film's real payoff would come later through critically. The reception was much more mixed but leaned more positive than the box office numbers might suggest. On Rotten Tomatoes, the majority of critics gave it a favorable review, with the overall consensus praising its self-aware sense of humor and its heartfelt take on He-Man. On Metacritic, though, the numeric score reflected more of a mixed reaction, and audience exit polls gave the film a solid but not spectacular grade. Several reviewers singled out Jared Leto's performance as Skeletor as a highlight, describing it as delightfully over the top in a way that fit the campy spirit of the original material. Other critics were less impressed, with some describing the film as visually overstuffed without enough originality to stand out, and a couple of reviews were more critical of certain story choices and its overall coherence. Overall, critics seemed split mainly on its humor, pacing, and how tightly the script held together, even when they liked the performances and action. Even with the mixed box office, the film clearly wasn't meant to be a one-off. Before release, director Travis Knight had already spoken about wanting to build a larger world and potentially set up sequels, and the mid-credits tease involving Adora and She-Ra was a deliberate hint at where the story could go next. Knight explained in interviews that he always likes to imagine what happens to his characters beyond the edges of a single movie, and that the She-Ra material was something he and the creative team cared about enough to plant seeds for, even if this particular film had to stand on its own first. Despite the film's rocky opening weekend, reports later confirmed that a sequel was indeed moving forward in development, showing that the studio was still committed to expanding this version of the Masters of the Universe world even after a shaky theatrical debut. The lasting popularity of Masters of the Universe can also be explained by the incredible world that surrounds its characters. Eternia is not simply a backdrop where heroes and villains happen to fight. It feels like a living planet with its own history, cultures, mysteries, forgotten civilizations, and ancient legends. Every mountain, forest, castle, desert, and hidden temple seems to carry stories that existed long before Prince Adam was born. This sense of history makes the world feel much larger than the events of a single movie. Even when the audience only visits a few important locations, there is always the feeling that countless adventures are taking place beyond the edge of the screen. That is one of the greatest strengths of success fantasy storytelling. The audience believes the world continues existing even after the movie ends. The filmmaker understood that creating this feeling would be essential if they wanted viewers to become emotionally invested in Eternia. Rather than presenting it as a collection of visual effects, they aim to build a world that feels ancient, mysterious, and worth protecting. Every kingdom, every battlefield, and every magical ruin contributes to that illusion, making the audience care not only about the heroes but also about the fate of the world itself. One of the most fascinating aspects of Eternia is the way it combines elements that would normally never exist together. Traditional fantasy stories usually focus on castles, dragons, kings, queens, and magical creatures, while science fiction often explores advanced technology, futuristic weapons, robots, and highly developed civilizations. Masters of the Universe refuses to choose between these two genres. Instead, it blends them into a single universe where ancient magic and advanced machinery exist side by side. A warrior carrying a legendary sword can stand next to a machine powered by futuristic technology without either one feeling out of place. This unusual combination became one of the franchise's defining characteristics and helped separate it from countless other fantasy worlds. For the filmmakers, Preserving this unique identity was extremely important because it reminds audiences that Eternia follows its own rules rather than copying more familiar fictional universes. This creative freedom allows almost anything to exist if it serves the story, giving artists, designers, and writers nearly unlimited opportunities to surprise viewers with imaginative locations, creatures, inventions, and magical powers. Castle Grayskull deserves special attention because it functions as much more than an impressive building. It represents the spiritual heart of the entire franchise. Its mysterious appearance immediately communicates that this is no ordinary fortress. Behind its enormous walls lies knowledge older than kingdoms, power greater than armies, and secrets capable of changing the fate of the universe itself. Throughout the history of the franchise, Castle Grayskull has symbolized wisdom as much as strength. It cannot simply be conquered through violence because true power requires responsibility. This idea makes the castle more meaningful than a typical fantasy location. Instead of existing merely as the setting for battles, it becomes a symbol of everything the heroes are trying to protect. In many ways, Castle Grayskull reflects the internal struggle within Prince Adam himself. Just as the castle contains extraordinary power hidden beneath a mysterious exterior, Adam hides the incredible strength of He-Man beneath the appearance of an ordinary young prince. This parallel gives the mythology additional emotional depth, showing that appearances rarely reveal the full truth. Another remarkable quality of the franchise is its enormous collection of unique characters. Unlike many fictional worlds where background figures blend together, nearly every important individual in Masters of the Universe possesses a distinctive personality, appearance, and purpose. Some characters represent courage, while others embody wisdom, ambition, loyalty, intelligence, or greed. Even secondary heroes and villains often leave lasting impressions because their designs are so imaginative. Over the years, this enormous cast has allowed fans to develop personal favorites beyond He-Man and Skeletor. Some admire the leadership of Teela, while others appreciate the intelligence of Man-at-Arms or the magical abilities of the Sorceress. On the villainous side, many fans enjoy the unpredictable nature of Evil Lyn, the mechanical menace of Trapjaw, or the relentless aggression of Beastman. This diversity helps the franchise appeal to many different personalities because almost every viewer finds someone they connect with. The movie has an opportunity to introduce these memorable characters to audiences who may never have encountered them before, expanding appreciation for the rich mythology that has existed for decades. Interesting fact: the original Masters of the Universe toy line introduced dozens of unique heroes and villains in only a few years, making it one of the most creative action figure collections ever produced. Many characters became fan favorites before they even appeared in television episodes because children invented their own adventures while playing with the toys. The influence of Masters of the Universe extends far beyond television and film. During the 1980s, the franchise became a cultural phenomenon that shaped an entire generation. Toy stores around the world filled their shelves with action figures, castles, vehicles, and accessories inspired by Eternia. Children spent countless hours recreating famous battles or inventing entirely new stories using their imaginations. Unlike passive entertainment, these toys encouraged creativity. Every child could become the storyteller, deciding which heroes would fight which villains and imagining adventures that had never appeared in the cartoons. This freedom transformed the franchise into something deeply personal for millions of fans. Even decades later, many collectors continue searching for rare figures, preserving unopened toys, and celebrating the artistry behind the original designs. The continued popularity of these collectibles demonstrates how deeply the franchise became woven into popular culture. The animated television series also played a crucial role in establishing the emotional connection that audiences still feel today. Each episode combined exciting adventures with simple but meaningful lessons about honesty, friendship, responsibility, courage, and kindness. At the end of many episodes, characters directly spoke to viewers, encouraging positive values in a way that became memorable for countless children. While modern audiences may view these lessons differently, they contributed significantly to the wholesome identity of the franchise. He-Man was never simply a warrior defeating monsters. He represented the belief that true strength includes compassion, fairness, and respect for others. Those messages continue resonating because they remain relevant regardless of changing times or evolving technology. Interesting fact: the famous closing morals lessons featured in many classic He-Man episodes became one of the series' most recognizable traditions, encouraging children to think about the values demonstrated during each adventure. As Hollywood increasingly searches for recognizable franchises with loyal fan bases, Masters of the Universe represents an especially valuable property because its mythology remains surprisingly flexible. Writers can focus on epic battles, political conflicts, magical mysteries, personal relationships, ancient prophecies, or large scale adventures without contradicting the central identity of the franchise. This flexibility gives filmmakers tremendous creative opportunities while still respecting the core themes that fans expect. A successful adaptation does not need to copy every storyline exactly. Instead, it needs to capture the emotional spirit that has always defined the world of Eternia. That spirit revolves around courage overcoming fear, responsibility triumphing over selfishness, and hope refusing to surrender even when darkness appears overwhelming. One challenge facing every modern adaptation involves balancing nostalgia with innovation. Longtime fans naturally want to recognize familiar locations, characters, costumes, and iconic moments. At the same time, simply recreating old stories scene for scene rarely satisfies modern audiences seeking fresh experiences. The filmmakers therefore faced a delicate balancing act. They needed to preserve the recognizable identity of Masters of the Universe while introducing enough originality to justify bringing the franchise back to theaters. This challenge extends beyond visual design. Dialogue, character development, pacing, emotional depth, and storytelling techniques all require careful modernization. Audiences today often expect more complex motivations, richer relationships, and greater emotional realism than earlier fantasy adventures typically provided. Successfully combining those modern expectations with the optimistic heart of the original franchise could become one of the film's greatest accomplishments. The legacy of He Man ultimately rests not on special effects or impressive battles but on inspiration. Across generations, the character has encouraged audience to believe that courage is a choice rather than a gift reserved for extraordinary people. Prince Adam begins as someone carrying doubts, fears, and responsibilities that seem impossible to bear. Yet every time he raises the sword of power, he chooses to protect others despite those fears. That decision remains the true source of his greatness. Muscles, magical weapons, and incredible strength may capture attention, but character is what earns lasting admiration. This timeless lesson explains why Masters of the Universe continues finding new audiences even after more than 40 years. Technologies change, filmmaking evolves, and entertainment trends come and go, but stories reminding people to choose bravery over fear never lose their power. If the 2026 film succeeds in capturing that essential truth while delivering spectacular adventure, memorable characters, breathtaking visuals, and emotional storytelling, it will not simply revive a classic franchise. It will introduce a whole new generation to one of fantasy's greatest heroes and remind longtime fans why they fell in love with the world of Eternia in the first place. As audiences spent more time discussing Masters of the Universe 2026, one topic kept appearing again and again. Could this movie become the beginning of a much larger cinematic universe? That question naturally emerged because the franchise contains enough stories, heroes, villains, kingdoms, and ancient legends to support multiple films rather than a single adventure. Unlike some fantasy worlds that revolve around only one central character, Eternia is filled with dozens of personalities whose lives intersect in fascinating ways. Every kingdom has its own history, every hero has personal motivation, and every villain believes they have a reason to pursue power. This depth gives the franchise enormous potential if the first movie succeeds with audiences. Hollywood has seen many successful shared universes over the past 2 decades, but building one requires patience. The first film must stand on its own before future stories can grow naturally from it. If viewers become emotionally invested in Prince Adam and the world around him, sequels and spin offs become possibilities rather than obligations. The filmmakers therefore carried a tremendous responsibility. They were not only making one movie, they were laying the foundation for what could become an entirely new fantasy franchise for modern audiences. One of the most exciting possibilities involves exploring the history of Eternia itself. Every ancient castle, forgotten temple, magical artifact, and legendary battlefield hints at events that happened long before the current story begins. Fantasy worlds become far more believable when they feel shaped by centuries of triumphs, tragedies, alliances, and conflicts. Imagine discovering who first built Castle Grayskull, how the Sword of Power was created, or what great war transformed Eternia into the world audiences now recognize. These mysteries have fascinated fans for decades because they suggest that the visible story represents only one chapter in a much larger history. Rather than explaining every secret immediately, the mythology encourages curiosity. Viewers enjoy imagining civilizations that rose and fell, legendary heroes whose names have been forgotten, and ancient battles whose consequences continue influencing the present. This sense of hidden history gives the world remarkable depth, making Eternia feel less like a fictional setting and more like a place with countless untold stories waiting to be explored. Another fascinating direction involves the emotional growth of Prince Adam beyond his initial transformation into He Man. Becoming a hero is only the beginning of his journey. Remaining a hero presents an even greater challenge. Leadership requires constant sacrifice. Every victory creates new responsibilities, and every decision affects the lives of countless people. A compelling sequel could explore how Adam gradually matures into the leader Eternia truly needs. Instead of simply becoming stronger in battle, he would become wiser, more patient, and more confident in guiding others. This evolution mirrors real life. Growing older rarely means becoming physically stronger. Instead, people develop greater judgment, emotional resilience, and understanding through experience. Watching Adam learn these lessons could provide powerful emotional storytelling while allowing audiences to grow alongside him. The relationship between He Man and Skeletor also offers tremendous opportunities for deeper exploration. Their conflict extends far beyond physical combat. They represent two completely different philosophies about power, leadership, and purpose. He Man believes strength exists to protect the weak and preserve peace. Skeletor believes strength exists to dominate others and satisfy personal ambition. Every confrontation between them therefore becomes more than a battle of muscles or magic. It becomes a clash between opposing worldviews. Stories built upon ideological conflicts often remain memorable because they encourage audiences to think about larger questions. What makes someone worthy of great power? Can absolute authority ever be trusted? Does true leadership require compassion? These timeless questions continue resonating because they extend beyond fantasy into everyday life. The best fantasy stories entertain audiences while quietly encouraging reflection on universal human experiences. Interesting fact: many legendary fantasy rivalries remain popular because the hero and villain represent opposite philosophies rather than simply opposing armies. Their personal beliefs make every encounter emotionally meaningful. The supporting heroes also deserve opportunities to develop beyond assisting the main character. Tila, for example, possesses leadership qualities that could easily support entire storylines focused on military strategy, personal sacrifice, and protecting Eternia during moments when He Man cannot be everywhere at once. Man at Arms represents another rich source of storytelling because his inventions, experience, and mentorship shape the future generation of heroes. The sorceress guards knowledge that likely stretches back thousands of years, making her one of the most mysterious figures in the franchise. Exploring these characters would expand the emotional scope of the universe while demonstrating that Eternia survives through teamwork rather than relying on one individual alone. Great fantasy worlds thrive because every important character feels capable of leading their own adventure. When audiences care about multiple heroes instead of only the protagonist, the fictional world becomes significantly more believable and emotionally engaging. The villains too offer opportunities for greater complexity. Skeletor may command loyalty through fear and ambition, but characters such as Evil Lyn, Beastman, Trapjaw, and Triclops each possess unique personalities that could influence future conflicts in unexpected ways. Alliances among villains rarely remain stable forever. Personal ambitions, rivalries, betrayals, and shifting loyalties often create fascinating drama inside the forces of evil themselves. Rather than presenting villains as identical followers, future stories could examine their individual motivations, showing why they choose to serve Skeletor or what personal goals they hope to achieve. Such development would make the conflicts richer because audiences would understand that even antagonists possess dreams, fears, and ambitions shaping their decisions. Technology will likely continue playing an important role in how audiences experience future adventures within Eternia. Modern filmmaking continues advancing at an extraordinary pace. Visual effects become more realistic every year, allowing impossible worlds to appear increasingly believable. Creatures can display subtle emotions, magical environments feel physically real, and enormous battles unfold with breathtaking detail. If Masters of the Universe establishes a strong visual identity, future films could expand the scale even further while maintaining consistency. Advances in virtual production, digital environments, and practical effects working alongside computer generated imagery give filmmakers creative tools that previous generations could only imagine. The original creators of He Man built an unforgettable universe using animation and imagination. Today's artists now possess technology capable of translating those dreams into astonishing cinematic experiences while preserving the adventurous spirit that first captured audiences decades ago. Interesting fact: many modern fantasy blockbusters blend enormous practical sets with digital extensions so seamlessly that audiences often cannot tell where the physical construction ends and computer generated environments begin. The influence of Masters of the Universe extends beyond entertainment because it represents a broader cultural phenomenon connecting multiple generations. Parents who once played with He Man action figures now introduce the same characters to their children. Grandparents who remember the original television series watch newer adaptations alongside younger family members discovering Eternia for the first time. Few franchises maintain that level of cross generational recognition for more than 40 years. This shared familiarity creates a unique emotional experience because different age groups approach the story with different memories while enjoying the same adventure together. Older viewers appreciate nostalgic references that remind them of childhood, while younger audiences simply experience an exciting fantasy world without needing previous knowledge. Successfully appealing to both groups simultaneously represents one of the greatest strengths any franchise can achieve. Looking back across the entire history of Masters of the Universe, perhaps the most remarkable achievement is not its toys, television series, comics, or movies. Its greatest accomplishment is preserving a timeless message beneath all the spectacle. Every magical battle ultimately reinforces the same simple idea. True strength begins with courage, responsibility, and compassion. Prince Adam becomes He Man not because he desires power but because he accepts responsibility. That distinction changes everything. His transformation symbolizes choosing service over selfishness, hope over despair, and sacrifice over personal comfort. These values remain just as meaningful today as they were when audiences first encountered the character decades ago. Regardless of how filmmaking technology evolves or how many new adventures unfold across Eternia, that emotional foundation continues defining the franchise. Heroes may wear armor, carry legendary weapons, and battle powerful villains, but their greatest victories always begin with the choices they make long before the fighting starts. That is why He Man continues inspiring audiences around the world, and it is why the legend of Masters of the Universe still has the power to captivate new generations who are only now discovering the magic hidden within the walls of Castle Grayskull. Although Masters of the Universe 2026 is built around fantasy, magic, and larger than life heroes, one of its greatest strengths is how closely its story reflects real life. Every important character faces choices that audiences can understand, even if those choices happen in a world filled with enchanted swords and ancient castles. Prince Adam struggles with responsibility. Skeletor is consumed by ambition. Tila fights to protect the people she cares about. Man at Arms tries to guide the next generation with wisdom earned through experience. These are not simply fantasy concepts, they are reflections of challenges that people face every day. That connection is one of the reasons the franchise has survived for so many decades. While the setting may be fictional, the emotions remain completely human. Viewers recognize fear, hope, loyalty, disappointment, determination, and sacrifice because they experience those same emotions in their own lives. The magical world of Eternia simply gives those feelings a grand and unforgettable stage upon which to unfold. The idea of hidden potential sits at the center of the entire story. Prince Adam appears ordinary to many people around him, yet he carries within himself the ability to become the most powerful defender in the universe. This message continues inspiring audiences because it suggests that greatness is often invisible. Many people underestimate themselves during difficult moments. They believe they are too weak, too inexperienced, or too ordinary to overcome major obstacles. He-Man's story quietly challenges that belief. It reminds viewers that extraordinary strength often begins with an ordinary decision to keep moving forward despite fear. The Sword of Power becomes a symbol of confidence rather than merely a magical object. It represents the moment someone chooses to believe in themselves. That symbolism explains why the famous transformation has remained so memorable across generations. Audiences are not only watching a physical change, they are witnessing the visible expression of inner courage finally emerging. Another lesson woven throughout the franchise concerns the responsibility that accompanies power. Modern entertainment frequently celebrates strength, influence, and success, but Masters of the Universe repeatedly asks a deeper question. What kind of person should possess great power? Prince Adam never treats his abilities as personal privileges. Instead, he views them as obligations. Every battle places him at risk because protecting others matters more than protecting himself. Skeletor, however, seeks power without accepting responsibility. He believes that possessing greater strength automatically gives him the right to rule. This contrast forms the emotional heart of their rivalry. One character sees power as service, while the other sees it as control. That philosophical difference remains surprisingly relevant because societies throughout history have faced similar questions about leadership, authority, and moral responsibility. Great leaders are rarely remembered simply because they possessed power. They are remembered because of how they chose to use it. Interesting fact: many literature scholars compare He-Man's journey to the classic hero's journey, a storytelling structure found in myths and legends from cultures around the world. The hero accepts responsibility, faces impossible challenges, grows through experience, and ultimately returns stronger both physically and emotionally. The relationship between hope and fear also defines much of the story. Skeletor frequently relies upon intimidation. He wants his enemies to believe resistance is impossible. Fear becomes one of his most effective weapons because frightened people often surrender before any battle even begins. He-Man represents the opposite idea. His presence inspires confidence. Whenever the heroes see him standing beside them, they regain the courage to continue fighting. This emotional contrast demonstrates that leadership extends beyond physical ability. Great leaders influence the emotions of those around them. They help others believe that victory remains possible even during moments of overwhelming uncertainty. That quality separates legendary heroes from ordinary warriors. Muscles may win individual battles, but hope often determines the outcome of entire wars. Friendship remains another pillar of the franchise. Prince Adam never succeeds entirely alone. Tila, Man at Arms, the Sorceress, King Randor, Queen Marlena, and many other allies contribute to every victory. Each person brings different strengths that compensate for someone else's weaknesses. This emphasis on teamwork gives the story greater realism despite its fantasy setting. Real achievements rarely result from one individual acting alone. Families, communities, organizations, and nations all depend upon cooperation. By showing heroes supporting one another rather than competing for attention, Masters of the Universe quietly encourages viewers to appreciate collaboration instead of individual glory. That message feels particularly meaningful in an era where many stories focus primarily on lone heroes. Eternia survives because people stand together, trusting one another even when circumstances become frightening. Another fascinating aspect of the franchise is its optimism. Modern fantasy has increasingly embraced darker themes, morally uncertain characters, and tragic endings. While those stories certainly have value, Masters of the Universe follows a different tradition. It celebrates heroism without embarrassment. It argues that kindness remains valuable, courage still matters, and hope deserves protection. Rather than suggesting that goodness is naive, it presents integrity as the greatest source of lasting strength. This optimistic perspective helps explain why the franchise continues attracting audiences from different generations. People naturally enjoy stories reminding them that doing the right thing remains worthwhile, even when the path becomes difficult. Optimism does not ignore suffering. Instead, it insists that suffering can be overcome through perseverance, friendship, and moral conviction. Interesting fact. Many classic fantasy adventures became timeless because they balance exciting action with hopeful messages, allowing audiences to leave inspired rather than discouraged. The enduring popularity of Masters of the Universe also reflects the remarkable imagination behind its creation. Few fictional universes successfully combine magical kingdoms, futuristic technology, mystical creatures, ancient prophecies, heroic warriors, and science fiction inventions into one coherent setting. Eternia embraces creativity without imposing unnecessary limitations upon itself. If a story requires an enchanted sword, it exists. If it requires advanced machinery, that exists too. This freedom allows each new adventure to introduce surprising ideas while remaining faithful to the established identity of the world. For artists, writers, and filmmakers, such flexibility becomes an extraordinary creative advantage because the universe constantly invites exploration rather than restricting imagination. As the years pass, every successful franchise eventually faces the challenge of remaining relevant for new audiences while respecting the legacy that longtime fans cherish. Masters of the Universe 2026 represents another important chapter in that ongoing journey. Whether viewers discover He Man for the first time or return after decades of fond memories, they encounter a story built upon values that never truly become outdated. Courage, responsibility, loyalty, compassion, and hope continue shaping meaningful lives regardless of changing technologies or cultural trends. That timeless emotional foundation explains why the legend of Eternia continues surviving generation after generation. Characters may receive updated costumes, visual effects may become more spectacular, and storytelling techniques may evolve, but the heart of the franchise remains remarkably consistent. Ultimately, perhaps the greatest achievement of Masters of the Universe is reminding audiences that true heroes are not defined solely by the battles they win. They are defined by the choices they make before those battles ever begin. Prince Adam becomes worthy of the Sword of Power long before he transforms into He Man because he repeatedly chooses responsibility over comfort, service over selfishness, and courage over fear. Those choices would matter even if he possessed no magical abilities at all. The transformation simply allows the world to see the strength that already existed within him. That message has inspired millions of fans for more than 40 years and it continues carrying the same emotional power today. As long as audiences continue believing that ordinary people can rise above extraordinary challenges through determination and integrity, the legend of He Man and the world of Eternia will continue standing proudly among fantasy's greatest and most enduring adventures.